these days we are pursuing in the context of some kind of economy that we are pursuing, not a permanent, we are not looking for a permanent economy, but we are looking for, an economy which is better than last year. But we are not thinking about economy in a longer term context. That is the economic model that I am pursuing. Is it going to promote natural abundance? Everything is abundant in nature. But is my industrial pursuit, is my economic pursuit going to promote that natural abundance, or it is going to hamper that natural abundance? So that question, I think, really needs to be asked. That it's about collective prosperity, it is about ecological abundance as much as it is about abundance as an industrial economy. Somewhere we seem to be in all the wars that we are raging, within the country and externally, we seem to be forgetting this thing about collective prosperity. So I'm going to talk about something slightly, oriented around kindness. I think, I was looking at the conference schedule and I could not find too much around kindness and empathy. And so when people asked me to write an abstract, I wrote an abstract around empathy, design, and innovation in Indian knowledge traditions. And so I'm speaking, more like a student of empathy, trying to understand empathy and what it can do for me. And we can see, and my slide is, my presentation is full of images. I hope you enjoy these images, and I hope these images talk to you. So I want to introduce four words that to me epitomize Indian knowledge traditions. The first word is Samajikta. And Samaj in the context of Indian knowledge traditions never restricted to humanity, never restricted only to human dimension, but linked to microbes, forefathers, afterlife. Samaj is much larger. In that context, there is deep respect, sense of interconnectedness with the unseen, with the intangible as much as with the seen, and there is a continuous dialogue with the unseen. Yes, the tangible is important. The lota is important in India. One of the most important products of Indian civilization, the National Institute of Design was trying to research which is the most ubiquitous product in India, and they found that the lota, in Tamil it's called the sombu. It is the most ubiquitous product. You may use it in a puja, you may use it at a funeral, you may use it for drinking water. And the context defines the utility. So context is very critical. So there has always been a deep sense of Samajikta in Indian tradition. Whatever is Samajik is sort of promoted, tends to last, becomes tradition. And whatever is asamajik, we like to discard it. We don't like to remain with something that is asamajik. The context, Samaj, and how we deal with the aquatic life, the avian life, the animal life, the plant life, the mineral, everything is important. And along with Samajikta, Paraspartha, whether whatever we are doing, does that lead to greater complementarity and interdependence? Is it promoting an interaction? Is it promoting an a co-creation? Is it promoting me to do something with you? When we talk of crafts in the Indian context, we say that you require 32 vidyas or 64 crafts to set up a village or a habitation. But these are not in isolation. The farmer will interact with the artisan, will interact with the dyeing person, will interact with the weaver, and then the beautiful fabric of wherever the fabric is. We have so many zones in India where there is wonderful fabric that is celebrated, and it is not, we're not going towards a specialization, but towards an integration to produce beauty. And you can see that integration here also. The audience is not separated from the artist. Audience is so critical. Child is important, the grandchild is important, the crying child in the audience is tolerated. So it's a Paraspartha, a complementarity and interdependence, leading to what we call natural abundance, not this thing of artificial abundance that we these days we are pursuing in the context of some kind of economy that we are pursuing, not a permanent, we are not looking for a permanent economy, but we are looking for, an economy which is better than last year. But we are not thinking about economy in a longer term context. That is the economic model that I'm pursuing. Is it going to promote natural abundance? Everything is abundant in nature. But is my industrial pursuit, is my economic pursuit going to promote that natural abundance, or it is going to hamper that natural abundance? So that question, I think, really needs to be asked, that it's about collective prosperity, it is about ecological abundance as much as it is about abundance as an industrial economy. Somewhere we seem to be, in all the wars that we are raging, within the country and externally, we seem to be forgetting this thing about collective prosperity. And at the core of it, of course, is Soundarya Drishti, that, if this Samajikta, if this Paraspartha is not leading to Soundarya Drishti, if the 10th house does not add beauty to the 9 houses that are already existing, then it's an ugly settlement, it's an ugly colony. And what are we doing about it in our education system, including in our new education policy? Are we thinking about promoting value of Soundarya Drishti, that anything 10th which is built, any new state that is created in India, Gandhi said that we have 70,000 villages. We are still about 30 odd states in the country. Tomorrow there may be a 31st state or a union territory. Now it's fashionable to create union territories now. Older states are becoming union territories. But will this union territory or state that is being created lead to greater beauty of the collective? Or is it going to lead to conflict between how resources are being shared, or how languages are understood, or how history is understood, or how vernacular is understood? So Soundarya Drishti is extremely critical. How are we going to promote Soundarya Drishti, including in institutions like IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad and so on? Does changing a logo of an institute lead to more Soundarya Drishti? That's the latest news in IIM Ahmedabad. I see Gandhi conspicuously absent from the conference schedule. I feel a little saddened by that, because, cradle of civilization, Bharatvarsh, and looking at everybody other than Gandhi, I think some kind of disservice has been done to ourselves. And Gandhi spoke about this concept of oceanic circles. He said that, everything begins with self. Reliance has to be on the self and then on the external. He talked about Swadeshi, about bread labor, about being kind to oneself before being kind to others, forgiving oneself before forgiving others. And it's as much a political concept as it's a spiritual concept, actually, that, are you focusing on your growth, or what are you focusing on? So Gandhi's concept of oceanic circle is very important for empathy, design, innovation. Are we focusing on developing our heart set, mindset, and skill set, or is it only about skill set? Today we are talking about lot about manufacturing, but are we beginning with soul and heart and mind and then with hands, or suddenly we are going to manufacture zero defect cars or zero defect robots? I think it has to begin with soul and mind and heart, and then probably we will be able to really produce products that are extremely beautiful and functional. Now, if you look at these 4 traditions that I like to talk about, one of them I call them agri-knowledge traditions. Then there is so much depth in agricultural knowledge traditions in India. And the agricultural knowledge traditions are extremely diverse. They are based on the local climate, soil zones. They're based on the local moisture zones. The tendency is to promote diversity. And there is a great interaction between the agricultural knowledge and the artisanal knowledge. So the kind of situations that we see in India post-independence, and including with the kind of agricultural policy, which looks more and more like an industrial policy, I see an utter lack of empathy. We want to eliminate pests. We do not understand that pests have a role in the ecology. You eliminate one pest, you have other kinds of crises. So we need to look more deeply at traditions of agricultural knowledge, at permaculture, at organic farming. It is not only about productivity. I think it is about that thing, about are we promoting natural abundance in agriculture? Annam Bahukur Vita. It's an ancient term. It's an edict to all kings that grow abundant food. But what is food? Today we are lacking an understanding of what is the right food to consume. we seem to be missing out on. Is it only NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium? Is it only the nutrition information that is printed on the label, or food is much more? Or do we need very little food to really nourish ourselves, but we are actually consuming a lot of maida and flushing it down our toilets and allowing the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to do the rest? So there is a lot of design element in how traditionally orchards, farms, pastures and forests interacted with each other. The houses were closest to the farms because the farms required most attention, and then the orchards required attention, pastures required little attention, and forests you took very little from the forest. So you did not really, you were very empathetic to the forest because the forest was critical for the pasture, for the orchard and for the farm. Nutrients came from the forest for the farm as well. So this design, how are we going to design our future systems if we are, instead of only talk about historicity. So my talk is quite contemporary to understand how are we going to have that, productivity and how are we going to get rid of the issue of nutritional insecurity that we seem to be having in our country today in many districts of our country. So there are deep traditions of artisanal knowledge, whether it is loha, mitti, lakdi, patthar, kapda, and you can go from Padmashali to, Vishwakarma. All the communities you can find tremendous understanding of material, of process, of temperature, of pressure, and yet we do not have space for our artisans in our National Institutes of Design, in our IITs, in our IIMs. These are institutions that we have built which are insular. None of these artisans who are as good as our engineers. Our engineers, I consider, can learn a lot from our artisans, but we have disempowered our artisans for a very long time. For the longest of time, we seem to have disempowered our artisans. These are the artisans who built these water wells with a tremendous respect for mineral, plant, animal and human. So this is not only serving the human. These bowdies or these water wells are not only serving the human. They are serving mineral, plant, animal, human, and they're serving the intangible as well with a deep respect. And look at the aesthetics here, and look at the kind of structures that our PWD and our NBCC is building today. So old woman from Karnataka who I think has conserved a tremendous amount of forest. To honor her, her photograph has been put here, and there's tremendous depth of knowledge with respect to what do we take from forest, how do we take from it, and how do we give back to the forest. The concept of sacred groves, that the forest is a sacred place and I take only that much that I actually deserve to take from the forest. Does our forest policy, can our forest policy learn from traditional knowledge systems of indigenous communities of forest dwellers? What can we, how do we look at the forest today? Or is the highway policy the most important, that golden quadrilateral more important? And then we talk we are cradle of civilization. We are not cradle of civilization anymore. I'm sorry, with the kind of highways policy that we have and the automotive policy that we have, we'll have very little forest left in a true sense. We may have plantations. We have no forest left really. Deep respect for Ritucharya, our diet, our how we lead our life, how courses are taught, how semesters are designed. Are we looking at Ritucharya? IITs have 2 semesters. We call it the January semester and the July semester. You look at the menu in the hostels. I think there is a lot that IITs can learn. I think we are throwing out constipated engineers into the planet. They take 20 years to fix their constipation. Until then, they are spoiling the universe. I think Dr. Das will agree with me. The kind of food that is served in our messes, are we looking at anything from cradle of civilization when we are designing our menu, when we are designing our systems here at IITs? Are we looking at Ritucharya? It's a very important to understand, can the mess menu change with the season? Can the food court be designed, all the, whatever food is being served in your conference, is it keeping in mind, what should be had in this time of the year? Sadly, IGNCA doesn't understand. IHAR doesn't understand. DRDO, of course, is far away from understanding. I'm really sorry. So are we practicing empathy for self? Because if without practicing empathy for self, there is no practice of empathy for anybody else. Are we practicing empathy? Are we able to connect with something larger than myself? And that's so important. That self-care is so important. Yeah. So without self-care, what kind of language? What kind of relationship? What kind of poetry? What kind of painting? What kind of relationship with neighbors? I don't care for myself. Naturally, I don't care for my neighbors. How I deal with my neighbors tells me how I deal with myself. So I think a lot of emphasis needs to be on how I care for myself. Do I look at myself with kindness? Do I begin with joy every single day? Is it about ananda? Is it about bliss? Is my life about seeking bliss, or is it about seeking a good bank account? Our education systems really need to learn. Is it about practicing unconditional love? How much of my life is about practicing unconditional love? How much of this conference is about practicing unconditional love? Beshart Prem. Yeah, all the acharyas. I think the previous speaker in the seminar was talking about some acharya decided to live 20 years less, but to propagate this knowledge system in China. Right? Such an unconditional love for humanity. One can see that in Ramanuja. Unconditional love for so-called downtrodden. How is unconditional love going to be practiced in modern institutions today? How are we going to practice? So you look at all traditional products, there's a deep sense of beauty, whether it is a painting, the rangoli that is made, or the diya, the modest, the diya, any manuscript, any kind of artifact, any sculpture, deep sense of beauty in traditional products, all coming from empathy, all coming from design and innovation springs from empathy, not from anything else. If it is not beautiful, it doesn't serve the purpose. How can this hall be made beautiful? About 2 weeks back, we organized an event here, and this whole room was covered with products from traditional products. All these lights were covered, and we had decorated there were sarees from all over the country which were used here. But in this conference, which is supposed to be about Bharatvarsh and about tradition, there is only modernity here. How do we resolve this paradox of how do we bring the the values of the traditional into the modern? How do we connect with rasa theory? How do we look at navarasa? And from there, how do we look at bhava? And then comes auchitya. What is auchitya? Ideas from ancient India for global design thinking. There is kala, there is vidya, there is kal chakra, there is collaborative creation or sangrahit, there is prakritik and jnana, auchitya. Universal appropriateness. We are concerned about something which is universally appropriate. How do we pursue that goal of universal auchitya? Vivekananda said that every being is a sentient, is a bodhisattva, potential bodhisattva. How does that thought permeate our education institutions, our placement, training and placement, which becomes a madhouse, where I ask, Sand kitne mein bika? Every year I ask my students, Sand kitne mein bika? At the placement. For people who don't understand Hindi, how much was the ox slaughtered for? So that's the only goal in education institutions. औचित्य नहीं है कुछ. ना मौसी बोलती है, ना मामी बोलती है, ना बुआ बोलती है. कोई भी औचित्य की बात नहीं करता. कहता बेटा नंबर 1 बनो, IIT में जाओ, IIM में जाओ. औचित्य की कोई बात नहीं कर रहा. रस भाव और औचित्य की बात हमने छोड़ दी है. So I think there is a great need for experiencing bliss within. We need to all deep dive to experience bliss deep within ourselves, ananda. And then, therefore, I will be able to express beauty without. It is not possible to express any beauty, create beauty in the external world of objects, of the tangibles, without experiencing the ocean of bliss that is there inside of me. Am I willing to do that? It takes a lot. It's a very courageous journey. And you may not be figured in the conference schedule 100 years after you're assassinated. You would not figure in the conference schedule 100 years after your assassination. If you are in a journey of experiencing bliss within, that's the risk. So somebody talked about rituals. We have designed great rituals over a period of time. All our rituals are about, how to express gratitude, how to express gratefulness. Are we grateful as a community, as a society? Do we feel that sense of gratefulness and gratitude? Are we feeling a spirit of oneness? When do we feel a spirit of oneness? Is it when we bash Pakistan in a Friday match in T20? Is that the only time I feel oneness? That's a very sad definition of oneness. And when do I feel interconnectedness with the whole universe? Because that gives me the power to really create and really impact and really, be that immense fountainhead of whatever we are, the immense potential that we have. So I'll end with 4 slides that I use in my pedagogy here at IIT Delhi for the last several years. I think it's, of course, it is all about learning from Bharatvarsha, but it's also about unlearning. Is it only about learning, or unlearning is critical for learning? Am I ready to unlearn? Am I courageous enough to unlearn? All the acharyas, each one of them was courageous. Yeah, Vishishtadvaita, Advaita, Shuddhadvaita. Every Acharya was courageous, was deeply courageous, was practicing original thinking. Aurobindo talks about original thinking. There's a beautiful piece on Aurobindo and original thinking. I think I should give a copy to the conference organizers, maybe to give it in the valedictory session. He talks about original. Is our thinking original? Today is our thinking original. All the things that are being talked about was about original thinking. Panini's Ashraddha is about original. How original is our thinking today? Because if thinking is original, then we will be able to be on a voyage of discovery, a true voyage of discovery, which will lead to not just an experience, but an experience of an experience. Anubhav ka anubhav hoga, which can potentially lead to immense transformation. Thank you so much. I hope I have stayed within the time limit without the timekeeper having to remind.
Thank you so much, sir.